How many of you agree? What is the internal largest organ of the human body? What is the largest organ of human body? Liver. Acha. Boys have all their skin. So today we'll deal with the skin and soft tissue infections. What do you understand by them? What is the function of skin? Protection from external environment. And what are the layers of skin? These are the layers: epidermis, dermis, underlying that is subcutaneous tissue, then fascia which covers muscles and bones, right? So whatever layer of this, whatever part of the skin is getting infected with an organism causing inflammation, which is evident by what symptoms, what signs? Redness, swelling, right? If it becomes a systemic infection, person may experience chills, fever, okay? So we're dealing with what are the causative organisms that can lead to skin and soft tissue infections. Again, what are the 4 entities that you have studied in microbiology? Bacteria, virus, fungus and parasites. Out of that, we'll be dealing with 2 main bacteria today: Staphylococcus, Streptococcus, some viruses and fungi, okay? So, starting with the first bacterium, that is Staphylococcus. It belongs to what family? I am asking family. Right. So, it is a gram-positive cocci and it belongs to. How do you differentiate these 2 families from each other? Because since they both are gram-positive cocci, but they do differ in morphology. What is the morphology of Staphylococcus? Cluster form. And why does it appear in cluster? Because daughter cells are attached to the parent cell and they are dividing in multiple planes, right? That's why you can see them as clusters, in groups. But in case of Streptococcus, how are they? They appear in small or long chains because they are divided in single plane, okay? So how are they differentiated? They are differentiated based on catalase test. Catalase test is positive by which organism? Micrococci. For strepto, it is negative. Catalase negative. It means they do not produce catalase. Then in Micrococci, you can see Micrococcus and Staphylococcus species. These are usually, Micrococcus are usually skin commensals. They are commensal flora, they do not cause any harm and they are about larger than Staphylococcus in size, usually arranged in tetrads, okay? But Staphylococcus, they are able to produce catalase coagulase. They are potential causative organisms in n number of diseases, and there are certain species that do not produce coagulase. They are known as coagulase negative Staph aureus. They are rarely pathogenic to man, but there are some good examples that can certainly cause infection. For example, Staphylococcus epidermidis and Saprophyticus. Saprophyticus is known to cause UTI in females, okay, most common cause in reproductive females. So we know that staph is catalase positive, it produces coagulase, it's a facultative anaerobe non-motile, right? It occurs in clusters, grape-like clusters, and it's about 1 micrometer in diameter. What does it produce? It produces pigment, yellow pigment on nutrient agar. This is nutrient agar. It produces pigment on nutrient agar. On blood agar, what will you see? Beta hemolysis, right? This clearing of the zone around the colonies. This is beta hemolysis. This is produced by which organism? Staphylococcus aureus. Okay. What are the virulence factors of this organism? See, there are cell wall associated factors, there are toxins and there are enzymes, right? So what are cell wall associated factors? Cell wall associated factors means these are present on the bacterial cell. So peptidoglycan, you know, this confers rigidity to the bacterial cell. This also is responsible for inflammatory response wherever it is lodged in human body. Okay. Then there is teichoic acid, which helps in adhesion of this bacterium to the mucosal surfaces. Then there are cell surface adhesins, clumping factors, which are exhibited in slide Coagulase test. Okay, in slide Coagulase, when you perform Coagulase test, have you seen Coagulase test? Okay, whenever you see slide Coagulase test, there is clumping of the bacterial colony that is exhibited by clumping factor. Okay, and in tube Coagulase, it is exhibited by which? Coagulase enzyme. Okay. Then there is protein A, which is anti-complementary. It protects the bacteria from immune system. These are all cell wall associated factors. What is this? Okay. Then there are toxins. What are these toxins? You know, the name suggests itself. Hemolysin and leukocidin. What do you mean by hemolysin? Lysis. It's causing lysis of the RBCs. Alpha, beta, gamma, delta. These are causing what? Lysis of the RBCs. Then there are leukocidins. Penton valentine toxin, very potential toxin, which is exhibited in community acquired MRSA. Okay. Community acquired, it means can be seen in necrotizing fasciitis and all. Okay. Then these are all toxin mediated diseases where what you can see. Can you see epidermolytic toxin? What does the name suggest? Epidermolysis. So it means it is removing the external layer of your skin, right? What is the external layer of the skin? Epidermis. What is the outermost layer? What is its name? Stratum corneum. Very good. So what will it cause? Can you see? It removes the layer of the skin. What is this thing known as? This is known as Nikolsky sign. Okay. This exfoliation of the skin from underlying skin is known as Nikolsky sign. It is seen in this staphylococcal scalded skin syndrome. Most commonly seen in children. Okay. Coming to enterotoxin. What does the name suggest? Entero means gut. Toxin. What does it cause? Food poisoning. You had some food outside. This is a preformed toxin. Will it be removed after you heat the food? No. The food was there. You consumed this food. In 1 to 6 hours, you develop diarrhea and vomiting. What is that? It's a food poisoning. Caused by which? Staphylococcus aureus preformed enterotoxin. Okay? Then, toxic shock syndrome toxin. This toxin is mostly seen in the females, usually using tampons in menstrual cycles. If you keep them for longer time and they get trapped in this tampon, this toxin is released, absorbed in the mucosa, goes into the blood vessels, and person goes into the shock. Does that mean this can't be seen in males? This can be seen in which cases? Osteomyelitis, staphylococcal osteomyelitis, abscess, carbuncle, you know, big pus collection in the body with Staph aureus. This toxin is released and person goes into the shock. Okay, this is about staphylococcal toxic shock syndrome. Okay, all these these are what? Preformed toxins. Okay, this enterotoxin is a preformed toxins, and these are all toxin mediated diseases we discussed. Coming to extracellular enzymes, it means these enzymes are released by Staphylococcus. What does Coagulase do? How does Coagulase help Staphylococcus in pathogenicity? What it does is it activates prothrombin and converts fibrinogen to fibrin. So blood clot is formed, and within that blood clot, this staphylococcus gets trapped in the body, and that's how it stops immune system from attacking it. Okay, this is how Coagulase will help it. Then there are heat stable thermonuclease and deoxyribonuclease. These two enzymes are specifically secreted by Staphylococcus aureus. Okay, that's how we can differentiate them from other staph. Then there are staphylokinases. As the name suggests, fibrinolysin. What is this causing? This is releasing that clot that was formed, and later this staphylococcus travels in other parts of the body through bloodstream, right? So it will help the hematogenic transfer of this bacteria, right? So it will transfer to other parts of the body and cause infection. What are other extracellular enzymes? High allurinidase, matlab, where is it found? Joints, right? Lipases and proteases, they will cause tissue destruction. They'll help in tissue destruction. All these enzymes will help in tissue destruction. This was about virulence factors of Staphylococcus. Okay? Cell wall, toxins and enzymes. This you have to remember. Okay, most of you should know that Staphylococcus is a normal flora in anterior nares, axilla, perineal skin. How does it get inside your skin? It's residing over the skin. It's taken up into the tissue through minor abrasions or instrumentation. By instrumentation, you should understand instrumentation in the hospital also come under this category. So when you think of surgical site infection after surgery was done, most common causes Staphylococcus aureus. Okay? I told you invasion takes place through the help of enzymes. This is the pathogenesis, how it's entering your skin. We also discussed how does it evade the host defense mechanism. We discussed protein A. I told you it is anti-complementary, right? Then opsonization bhi inhibit karta hai, and small colony variants, how do they survive intracellularly? They also has Coagulase enzyme, they also has streptokinase enzyme, which helps them in preventing them from immune system. Now, what are the clinical manifestations and how can you see these manifestations on the skin? Basically, what is happening, the skin is getting affected and it's producing all these infections. So, these are just the names of the parts getting affected. For example, folliculitis, where hair follicle is infected. Furuncle, it's a pustular lesion in hairy and moist regions of the body. Okay. Carbuncle is usually very commonly seen in the lower nape of the neck, most commonly seen in diabetic patients. Very common finding. Okay. Then abscess. Abscess is collection of pus. Everybody knows about abscess. Mastitis is infection in the breast. Okay. Impetigo mostly occurs in children, usually appears at red sores on the face, right, with honey colored crust. It later crust. These sores will later become dry and crust. Then surgical wound infections we saw. Cellulitis is inflammation of skin and subcutaneous tissue. Okay, and then hidradenitis suppurativa, it's a follicular infection in the apocrine gland areas such as axilla. Now you tell me which is which. First one is, you can see singular follicles getting affected. Folliculitis. This is furuncle. This is carbuncle. This is, can you see the suture mark? Surgical site infection. This is abscess. Okay. This is honey crust appearance. Impetigo. Very good. This is skin and subcutaneous tissue infection. Cellulitis. ये क्या है? Hidradenitis suppurativa. Where is it? See, axilla, apocrine gland. Okay. Anybody got nauseated? What else can it cause? It can cause everything that is possible, right from musculoskeletal infection to respiratory to UTI, pyelonephritis, meningitis, anything. Okay? But what are we discussing today? We are discussing skin and soft tissue infections. I told you they can cause bacteremia, they can cause UTI. These are toxin-mediated illnesses that we studied just now. And CA-MRSA. Which toxin was prominent in CA-MRSA? Leukocidin. What was the name of this toxin? Penton valentine toxin. Okay. How do you do the laboratory diagnosis of Staph aureus? Don't talk. Gram-positive cocci in clusters and pus cells. By pus cells, you are taking pus sample. So you will see pus cells. Then you will see golden yellow pigmented colonies on nutrient agar. On blood agar, we'll see narrow zone of beta hemolysis. We already saw this. There are certain selective media we can use, mannitol salt agar, salt milk agar and Ludlam's medium. Okay, this also has the salt concentration. Then after doing culture on these plates, you will take the colonies and perform smear microscopy. This is again gram-positive cocci in clusters. What are the biochemical identifications you can use? Catalase positive and it should be coagulase positive. Okay. We can take automated systems such as Vitek and Malditov, and then we have to go for antimicrobial susceptibility testing. Okay. This is how you saw it from the direct sample. This is how you saw it from the culture plate, right? This is nutrient agar, this is blood agar, this is tube coagulase positive. This is not positive. Why is this positive? The clumping is formed. This is slight coagulase. This is slight coagulase positive. You can see the clumping of the bacterial colony. This is negative. Okay. Then parenteral therapy for serious infections in case of Staphylococcus aureus. If it is methicillin sensitive, you give nafcillin or cloxacillin. If it is MRSA, if it is not sensitive to methicillin, you will give vancomycin. Should you be giving vancomycin to MSSA? Always remember, even if vancomycin you are using for MRSA, but vancomycin should never be used in MSSA. Okay? Why? Why? Somebody is talking. It is inferior in terms. Efficacy is seen more with the methicillin sensitive penicillins. Okay, methicillin antistaphylococcal penicillins than vancomycin. Okay, in this case for MSSA. In case of empirical therapy, what is empirical therapy? Empirical therapy is when the patient has come to you, you have to start the patient and cover for both the organisms because the status is not known yet. The causative organisms you don't know yet. So gram positive and gram negative, they both have different target antimicrobials. So when you are starting with the antibiotic coverage, you have to think that it could be MRSA, could not be. So then you can give vancomycin with or without addition of aminoglycoside, and once it is known to you that it's MSSA, you can de-escalate the medications, okay? And if it is MRSA, you can continue with vancomycin, right? What is the oral therapy that you can give for skin and soft tissue infections? You can give these oral combinations, dicloxacillin. You can give alternative medications such as cort, doxy or linezolid. Linezolid is given for a very long time in osteomyelitis patients. Clindamycin will also help you with the toxin mediated illnesses. Okay, remember this. Then there is drug resistance. We can see, we are talking about MSSA, MRSA. We can see drug resistance in Staph aureus. How does this happen? Production of beta-lactamase enzyme. What do you mean by beta-lactamase enzyme? You know beta-lactams? This enzyme is produced by the bacterium which render these antibiotics useless. So whenever there is this enzyme produced by the bacterium, how it is transferred between Staphylococcus aureus strains? Through transduction. What do you mean by transduction? Bacteriophage mediated, right? How will you overcome this? By adding del BLI combination, clavulanic acid or sulbactam combination in case of beta-lactams. Then another kind of resistance that is seen by alteration of penicillin binding protein, which is shown by MRSA strain. What is happening here? They have this MEK-A gene. This MEK-A gene, it alters PBP to PBP2A, and this PBP is the site of target for drugs. So when it is changed to this, they are rendered useless. Okay? What are the risk factors for acquiring this? Poor hygienic conditions, close contact, contaminated material, or individuals with the damaged skin. Your skin gets brushed and you might acquire this. Do healthcare workers carry this strain? Is there a chance that they carry this? Working in the hospital environment, there is a chance, right? Where will they carry it? In their nails and fingernails and between the web spaces, right? Okay, in the beginning I told you about two kind of MRSAs. One is community associated and hospital associated. Where can you see community associated? I had told you necrotizing fasciitis. What is exhibited? Penton valentine toxin. Which MEK-A gene subtype is shown by this? 4, 5 and 6. In hospital MRSA, it is more drug resistance. Multi-drug resistance is seen in which MRSA? Hospital acquired MRSA. Okay. What are the strains that are expressed? MEK-A gene 1, 2 and 3. And they can cause what? Since it's a hospital, they can cause surgical site infection, perioperative wound infections, right? So to say nosocomial outbreaks also they are able to cause. How will they cause nosocomial outbreaks? Because healthcare workers are involved, right? How will you detect this MRSA? Gold standard is PCR, detecting MEK-A gene. Through AST, you see cefoxitin disc susceptibility. This is the surrogate marker for identification. If cefoxitin is resistant, it means the strain is methicillin resistant. Okay. Or you can perform for penicillin binding protein 2A latex agglutination. How will you screen MRSA carriers in the hospital? You will take the samples from them. You will take the samples from their nares, swabs. You can take samples from the web spaces and smear it on mannitol, oxacillin agar. Okay, that's how you check for MRSA carriers within the hospital. For these carriers, if you find them with the carrying this MRSA, you will treat them with 2% mupirocin ointment, or in case of patients, you will give them chlorhexidine body bath. Okay, that was about staphylococcus infections. You know about infection control measures? Anything about infection control measures? Have you heard about infection control measures anytime? First and foremost thing is hand hygiene. So when we are talking that healthcare workers are carrying this in their hands, what should they do before and after touching any patient? They should wash their hands. So hand hygiene should also help you with the infection control of MRSA. Okay. That was about staphylococcus. Coming to beta hemolytic streptococcal infections. Streptococcus we discussed. Streptococcus is a gram-positive cocci, appears in chains because it divides in one plane, right? It is catalase negative. Okay. This is the classification that you have to remember. Based on the oxygen requirement, we describe streptococci as aerobic and facultative anaerobic. and obligate anaerobes. Obligate anaerobes means anaerobiosis चाहिए रहेगा इनको. Where will you find them? In moist places of the body. For example, oral cavity. So Streptococcus will be seen in oral cavity. You leave it here. Obligate anaerobes. Then further, aerobes and facultative anaerobes based on hemolysis. Hemolysis that you see this here on blood agar, sheep blood agar plate. You can describe them as alpha hemolysis, beta hemolysis and gamma hemolysis. What is alpha hemolysis? Alpha means partial hemolysis, right? Beta means complete hemolysis and gamma means no hemolysis. So gamma and no hemolysis is seen in Enterococcus, and now Enterococcaceae is separately a different family. So we will deal with what? We will deal today with beta hemolytic streptococci because they are able to cause suppurative and non-suppurative lesions. Alpha hemolysis shown by viridin streptococci and pneumococci. Pneumococci you have heard in pneumonia, right? We will leave that here also. Then we'll further, based on C carbohydrate antigen that is present on the cell wall, we describe these beta hemolytic streptococci under Lancefield grouping into 20 serogroups from A to V except I and J. ये जो क्लासिफिकेशन है बीटा हेमोलिसिस का सिर्फ, इसमें 20 सीरो ग्रुप्स है जिसमें I और J नहीं है. ये सीरो ग्रुपिंग A और V तक है, ठीक है. इसके अंतर्गत मैं तुम्हें बताऊंगी ग्रुप A और ग्रुप B. तो तुम्हें क्या याद रखना है? ग्रुप A में कौन सा बैक्टीरिया है? स्ट्रेप्टोकोकस पाइजीन्स. और ग्रुप B में कौन सा बैक्टीरिया है? स्ट्रेप्टोकोकस A galacti. ठीक है. Streptococcus A galacti causes postpartum puerperal sepsis in pregnant females and neonatal meningitis because neonate has passed from the labor canal, right? Because they were carrying this bacteria in their labor canal, right? So this was about group B Streptococcus. What is the name of this Streptococcus? Streptococcus A galacti. And what are we studying now? Streptococcus pyogenes. Any confusion about this classification? What did we study? Based on O2 requirement, we are describing them as obligate anaerobe, which is Peptostreptococci, which is found in human body as a commensal flora in oral cavity, urogenital tract, etc. Okay. Then we describe aerobic and facultative anaerobes on basis of hemolysis as alpha, beta and gamma. Alpha hemolysis is shown by viridin streptococci and pneumococci. Beta hemolysis shown by under Lancefield grouping. They are further classified based on C carbohydrate antigen. They are classified into 20 serogroups from A to V except I and J, right? And gamma hemolysis is by Enterococcus. Okay. Further again they are classified group A. Group A pyogenes is further classified based on Griffith typing, based on M protein and genotyping. That are more than 150 and 200 types. But till this you have to remember it properly. Okay. Then what are the virulence factors? Same as we saw in Staphylococcus, cell wall, toxins and enzymes, right? Cell wall antigens, lipoteichoic acid, it helps in adhesion to the pharyngeal epithelial cells. Why am I saying pharyngeal epithelial cells? Because it is most commonly causing tonsillitis, pharyngitis, Streptococcus pyogenes you will see in these cases commonly. Then C carbohydrate antigen was responsible for Lancefield grouping, right? Then M protein is the principal virulence factor, we'll see about it. What are other cell wall protein? There are F factor, Fimbriae, that also helps in adhesion, and M protein associated proteins known as opacity factor, it is associated with skin infections. This M protein associated protein is associated with skin infections. Then there is this capsule which is anti-phagocytic but not antigenic. right? So you cannot help this with serotyping, serology. Then we discussed M protein. It is the principal virulence factor of group A streptococcus. That is why we were classifying them based on M protein also. Then what does it do? It inhibits complement mediated opsonization by phagocytes. In case of staphylococcus, who was doing this? Protein A. There was name. What was the name there? Protein A. Okay. Then same thing can be seen here. I told you about toxic shock syndrome. What was happening in toxic shock syndrome? The patient was going into hypotension, shock-like status, bradycardia, right? Why does it happen? This protein, it complexes with the fibrinogen and binds with neutrophils. Ultimate reaction is release of inflammatory mediators causing vascular damage and changes in vascular system leading to hypotension. Okay, you might have heard about ASO titer. Where does this term come from? In ASO titer, we are talking about anti-streptolysin O antibodies. Okay, we check that titer in the patients. So what is this titer? What is this antibody? This is streptolysin O toxin, which is released by this bacterium. It is oxygen labile, heat labile. It is strongly antigenic and used as a standard marker for retrospective diagnosis of streptococcal infections. Okay. Why retrospective? What is the sequel of streptococcal infection? Autoimmune में पढ़ा था हमने. Then there is streptococcal pyrogenic exotoxin, which induces fever. What do you mean by pyrogenic? Pyrogen means inducing fever, right? So this, where will you find this? Wherever there is presence of fever. In case of scarlet fever, necrotizing fasciitis, TSST, you will see this streptococcal pyrogenic exotoxin in these cases. Okay. Streptokinase, same as staphylococcus. You might have seen that have you heard of streptokinase being used in myocardial infarction? This has a therapeutic use also. We use this in myocardial infarction and other thromboembolic disorders. To dissolve this embolus, we can use this toxin. Okay, so it has this therapeutic usage also. And there are certain other enzymes, streptodornase, DNases. What do? They liquefy the thick pus. That is why when you see streptococcal pus, it do not appear yellow or thick. It will appear more like an exudate. Okay. Unlike in staphylococcus, you will see yellow, bright yellow, thick pus because of its capability of, even on the agar plates you will see pigment, right? It will appear yellow, this pus. But in case of streptococcus, you will see exudate because it has this enzyme streptodornase which liquefies the pus. Okay. This one I told you, hyaluronidase. These days girls are using it on their faces. Okay. Certain other enzymes, they all are responsible for tissue destruction. What are certain suppurative infections, manifestations that streptococcus can cause are pharyngitis, we saw, scarlet fever, mostly in children, and impetigo patient we saw in the staphylococcus, and cellulitis or erysipelas. Manifestations are all same unless you take a swab and run it through a laboratory, you will not know which organism has caused it, right? Except in few cases. For example, Pseudomonas will make which kind of pus? Greenish pus, right? Green pigment it produces. Staphylococcal which will make which kind of pus? Yellow thick pus. Streptococcus will make which kind of pus? more like transparent exudate like pus, right? Okay. Then this can also cause necrotizing fasciitis. What is this? This is impetigo. This is erysipelar rash on face. What is this? This is necrotizing fasciitis. So here can you see this streptococcal, had it been, can you see this transparent thing? This is all muscle that can see. This is subcutaneous tissue. Slowly, gradually, even this will get infected, right? Why there are sequels after streptococcal infections? Because they have cross reactivity between other human antigens. How will you remember this? Cell wall M protein of streptococcus has cross reactivity with the myocardial antigen. And cell wall C, just C, remember C with the cardiac walls. Then other are quite evident, like this one that is found in the joint, it will have cross reactivity with the synovial fluid. What do I mean by this? It means that there will be manifestations in these particular organs. Here there will be arthritis. Here there will be myocarditis, right? How to remember this? You might get this as an MCQ. Just remember cell wall C carbohydrate with the cardiac walls, M protein, myocardium, this one with the joint fluid, peptidoglycan, cell wall. Just remember with the skin. This is bacterial skin, this is our skin, okay? And cytoplasmic membrane with the glomerular vascular intima. How do you process it in the laboratory? Depending on the site of infection, you will take the sample, you will go for direct smear microscopy, you will find the pus cells, gram-positive cocci in short chains like shown in this picture. On blood agar, you will see pinpoint colony with wide zone of beta hemolysis. What is the name of selective agar for streptococcus? Crystal violet blood agar, okay? Then there is one thing that you can differentiate group A streptococcus from group B streptococcus is that group A is bacitracin sensitive and group B is bacitracin resistant. What is bacitracin? It's an antibiotic, okay? So this is bacitracin sensitive and group B Streptococcus agalacti, it is bacitracin resistant. CAMP test is positive in agalacti, CAMP test is negative for gas, group A streptococcus. What is CAMP test? CAMP test is Christie-Atkins-Munch-Peterson test. 4 लोगों ने मिलकर इस टेस्ट को बनाया था, उनके ऊपर ये है CAMP test. What happens in CAMP test? Group A, Group B streptococcus जो होता है, it will enhance the hemolysis of Staphylococcus aureus. So what will you do? You will draw a perpendicular line of Staphylococcus aureus and then horizontal line of Group B, Streptococcus agalacti. So wherever they are crossing, you will see the widening of the hemolytic zone or enhancement of this hemolysis, that is CAMP test positive, which is seen in GBS, Group B streptococcus. In Group A streptococcus, it is negative, okay? I told you about CAMP test because you need to understand what is CAMP test negative, okay? Then you can go for automated methods such as Malditroph or Vitek. Typing is done based on Group C antigen, I told you, carbohydrate C antigen, Lancefield grouping, then Griffith and EMM typing, genotyping and M protein typing. In serology, we are using ASO antibodies and anti-DNase B antibodies, but most commonly these antibodies are used. Also, we can go for antimicrobial susceptibility test. This is how the streptococcus will look in direct smear. This is from the culture. Can you see pinpoint small colonies with wide zone of beta hemolysis here? This is blood agar, sheep blood agar. And this is, what is this? Bacitracin. Bacitracin was sensitive in which case? Okay. Drug of choice remains penicillin. Very easy to treat. In case of resistance, you can also give macrolides, erythromycin. See, in all the cases you are giving penicillin. In case of toxic mediated syndromes, you will add clindamycin. Okay. That was about Streptococcus and Staphylococcus. Take 5 minutes break, then we'll start about viruses. With this skin and soft tissue infections, what do you understand by this viral exanthems? What do you understand by viral? Because of virus. Exanthems means basically a widespread rash associated with fever and other symptoms. Okay. So, is there anything that reminds you from childhood that, oh, I also had this viral exanthem, I had this viral infection, a widespread rash was there, fever was there, and I was in fatigue after this? हाँ सही बोल रहे हो, कौन बोला? Chicken pox, very good. So, we'll see all that today, okay? Exanthem is eruption or rash on the skin associated with fever or other systemic symptoms such as fatigue. Don't talk. Then, most of these exanthems, they have commonly which etiology? Viral etiology. And very important to remember, exanthems can also be due to drug reactions, adverse effects of drugs, right? Now you remember this, these are certain common viruses that you have heard by now. What are these viruses? Herpes viruses. Is varicella zoster a herpes virus? We'll see about that, okay. So these are all viruses that will cause all these skin lesions or viral exanthems. And these are certain RNA viruses, measles, rubella, these viruses also cause these infections, okay. Coming to important group to discuss, herpes virus infections. How do we describe them? We describe them based on their latency because they have ability to undergo periodic reactivation. That is why a person who had been infected with varicella zoster in the past has a risk of developing shingles. Have you heard about shingles? Okay. Herpes virus is a linear double-stranded DNA virus, icosahedral symmetry. This is what? This is icosahedral symmetry. Can you see this? This is icosahedral symmetry. What do you mean by icosahedral? 20 faces, 20 facets, right? But we'll focus on classification first. These herpes viruses, they are described in 3 subfamilies, alpha, beta and gamma. So these subfamilies, based on the site of latency of this virus. Latency means this virus goes and sits latent in certain parts of the body without undergoing replication. So they are in the state of dormancy. They are not undergoing any replication, but they are not also causing any active disease. So wherever they are causing this latency, you will describe them based on that. And duration of replication and cytopathology. So you see this alpha has the site of latency in neurons and duration of replication is very short, about 10 to 18 hours, and it is cytolytic, okay, it causing cytolysis. What viruses are included here? Human herpes virus 1, 2 and 3. Now can you see common name for human herpes virus is 3. Okay, why are you calling them human herpes virus? There are 100 these herpes viruses. Out of those 100, these 8 herpes virus that we are seeing now are able to cause human disease. Okay, that is why we have officially named them as herpes virus 1 to 8. but commonly they are known by these names also. How will you remember? First, just remember this: human herpes virus 3 is varicella zoster virus. Epstein-Barr virus, Barr has four letters, that is human herpes virus 4, right? Can you see? Human herpes virus 4. And CMV, which is cytomegalovirus, it is human herpes virus 5, okay? Rest others are human herpes virus only, 1, 2 and 4, 5, 6, 3, 4, 5 we saw, 6, 7, and out of this 8th is able to cause Kaposi's sarcoma, okay? This is a precancerous. So, based on latency we were seeing, out of this, just take a look. This neuron's site of latency is for 1, 2 and 3, and it is cytolytic. Later, beta has long duration of replication, which is more than 24 hours, and it is cytomegalic. What do you mean by cytomegalic? It will cause the cells to swell, as the name suggests. What is the site of latency? Glands and kidneys, okay, which it belongs to genus cytomegalovirus, human herpes virus 5, also known by the name of cytomegalovirus, okay. Then you see last, okay, this has been cut off. Here I was supposed to say human herpes virus 7 and 8 and 6 and 4, they belong to long duration of replication, more than 24 hours. Out of this 6 and 7, they belong to site of latency is for lymphoid tissue is T cells, whereas in 4 and 8 it is B cells, okay. So there is 3 site of latency. One is neuron, second is gland and kidneys, third is lymphoid tissue. Lymphoid tissue में there are specific cells. T cells में क्या है? 6 and, यहाँ पे लिखा है ना, 6 and 7. And B cells में क्या है? 4 and 8. Okay? Here you see 4 and 8. What was the common name for herpes virus 4? Epstein-Barr virus. And human herpes virus 8 was able to cause Kaposi's sarcoma. ठीक है? This human, now we'll discuss herpes simplex virus 1 and 2. 1 and 2 did not have any other common names. So whenever we are talking about 1 and 2 herpes virus, just remember that this 1 causes infection above the waist. What do you mean by above the waist? Above the waist means oral or facial mucosal lesions, encephalitis, skin lesions, ocular lesions, all are above the waist lesions. These are caused by herpes simplex virus HSV1. Below the waist will be caused by HSV2. Okay? Most commonly, who are affected? Young children. Here, young adults. Young adults, but neonatal herpes. Why? Why? Same as A. galacti. This neonate is passing through labor canal, no? And in young adult, it is causing infection below the waist. So the mother is infected. She'll give this infection to the neonate. Understood? Don't get confused with this thing. Okay? Where are they latent? We were told that they are latent in neurons. Now this herpes virus, this is above the waist. So it will be latent in trigeminal ganglia. And this is below the waist. So this will be in sacral ganglia. Okay? Understood this much? This is about HSV 1 and 2. This I told you. This also I told you that they do not, they replicate, they lie there, but they do, after undergoing latency, they will not actively replicate, but undergo reactivation after certain years. What happens after certain year? Why do they go replication? In case of axonal injury, fever, physical or emotional stress, or exposure to the UV light. This can lead to the deactivation of these viruses, okay? And then they can cause the sequel to these diseases. Incubation period is about 1 to 26 days. The most important thing we have already discussed, that HSV 1 and 2 are capable of causing these infections, but whenever there is HSV 2, you have to always remember that intrauterine infections and genital infection will always be caused by HSV 2 most commonly, okay, and neonatal infections HSV 2, okay. What is this? Which virus? Ocular infection, which virus? HSV 1. Oral mucosal lesions, which virus? HSV 1. Cutaneous lesions have these particular names. Just see herpetic, herpeticum in everything. You have to remember it like this. Herpetic whitlow, herpes gladiatorum, eczema, herpeticum, everything relates to herpes virus. What are the other infective syndromes that HSV can cause? They can cause CNS infections, ocular, genital, visceral and disseminated herpes in the body, and neonatal herpes. Okay. Most importantly, how does the transmission occur? Transmission occur through contact with the infected person, secretions. Okay. Children are most commonly affected because they cannot keep their own hygiene. And most adults are carriers throughout life. But they do not give this unless there is active disease going on in their body. They can also be transmitted through sexual and vertical routes. How do you diagnose them? Can you see the viruses in the microscope? Which microscope? Is electron microscope available everywhere? No. So what do? We go for pathology. We see the pathology that was caused by these viruses, and here you are going for cytopathology. What are you seeing here? This is the Jameson stain which is detecting the inclusion body. What do you mean by inclusion body? It is basically a protein aggregate which was formed because of the viral pathology. Okay, so these multinucleated giant cells you will be able to see. This is Zank smear from the tissue scraping which was infected, and you are able to see this. So we'll find inclusion bodies in pathology. Now virus isolation can be done by conventional cell lines. And what will you see on these cell lines? You will see diffuse rounding and ballooning of these cells. These normal cells, they will become ballooned. They'll become bigger in size. Viral antigen detection can be done through direct immunofluorescence assay, or you can go for PCR for HSV DNA detection. Okay, this is how you detect the antibody through ELISA, immunofluorescence as ELISA. What is the drug of choice? Drug of choice is acyclovir. How does it act? It inhibits viral DNA polymerase. Okay. In case of acyclovir resistance, you can give foscarnet. How will you prevent this? You can prevent the herpes infection through safe sexual practices, and in case of neonatal herpes, you will give acyclovir to the mothers during 3rd trimester, and you will deliver this child through cesarean section, not through the labor. That was about herpes 1 and 2. Varicella zoster was herpes, human herpes virus 3. You have known about 2 clinical entities. You only told me about chickenpox. You know that when chickenpox was, a person was infected by chickenpox, you might have heard that after 60 years of age, suddenly a person developed rash over one side of the body and tremendous pain, right? especially on the face and upper part of the body, trunk. What is that? That is reactivation of this virus. What is the name of this disease? Shingles. We call it shingles. Again, how does this enter? Through upper respiratory mucosa or conjunctiva or contact transmission. You can say it needs contact and airborne precautions. So whenever you see the person infected with chicken pox, you might have noticed that person going to school, and if one person falls sick in the class, many students contract this disease because it has this spread. It spreads through contact or respiratory route, right? Then once it goes to the mucosa, it spills to the blood and carried through the infected mononuclear cells to other sites. So that the other sites, they will produce skin rashes, they'll go to respiratory tract, and the person will become active case for spreading the disease again, and it will also go to neurons where it will go latency. It will stop replicating and it will lie there for years, right? What is the incubation period? About 2 to 3 weeks. How do you see chickenpox? Centripetal development of rashes. It will start here and spread all over the body. Have you seen it unilateral anytime? No, it's bilateral, it is diffuse and appear in crops. Many rashes will appear at once. Okay. Also, these rashes are vesicular. You know what is vesicular? You know what is macular, papular, vesicular? Having the mouth, macule, papule, they just eruptions from the skin, right? What is the most common infective complication? Secondary bacterial infection can be there, and if this aggravates, it can cause CNS involvement. So these patients can develop aseptic meningitis, encephalitis and cerebellar ataxia, okay? And the most serious complication is varicella pneumonia, where people might die because of this complication, okay? It is most commonly seen in adults. This here, ophthalmic branch of trigeminal nerve is involved. So wherever this nerve is supplying, that region you will see has developed rashes. Okay, so only one ganglion is involved. This has a nervous spread. Okay, so you will see this is how it is commonly manifested. What do we call it? Zoster or shingles. This is reactivation of the varicella zoster virus. How do you perform laboratory diagnosis? You will take sample from vesicular lesions cap. You will perform Jamesa staining. You will see Zank smear. And same as herpes simplex virus, you will see 1 and 2, you will see this. Human herpes virus, you will see it in virus isolation, cytopathic effects such as diffuse rounding and ballooning of infected cells. Antibodies through ELISA, PCR, certain biofires are there. What is biofire? Biofire are basically a PCR only, where you run this test particularly for the panel. So you will see meningitis or encephalitis panel, where you will see all the probable causative organisms are there, including virus, bacteria, anything that can cause meningitis or encephalitis. They will run, and whatever comes positive will be the positive test for this particular patient. What is the treatment? Acyclovir again. What are the vaccines available for this? Whenever you are learning the vaccines in these viruses, just remember the strains. They usually ask the strains that are used for vaccine development. So live attenuated vaccine using OCA strain of varicella zoster is available. It is given to children after 1 year of age. For post-exposure prophylaxis, you can also prefer for immunoglobulins. And in case if the mother has developed chicken pox within 5 days of delivery, within just before the 5 days the delivery happened, and after 48 hours you will give this neonate IVIG, otherwise it is not required. Why? If the mother is already infected, why are you not giving it? Why will you not give immunoglobulin to the neonate if mother is infected with chicken pox? Huh? Loudly. The neonate will carry the antibodies from mother, no? Right? Okay. Then coming to measles. Measles is RNA virus. Again, highly contagious. Usually seen in, it's a highly contagious childhood disease. You name it as childhood disease. It is characterized by fever, respiratory symptoms and typical maculopapular rash. What were we seeing in chicken pox? We were seeing vesicular rash. Okay. How does the transmission take place? Again through inhalation of droplets or small particulate aerosols. They remain usually in the schools. The children get affected after one kid falls sick in the class. Spreads through respiratory tract, then to the local lymph nodes, enter to the bloodstream through monocytes, again multiply in RAS and cause secondary viremia and disseminated site. Similar picture was there in which bacteria? Except monocytes. This disease can be divided into 3 stages. First is prodromal stage, then eruptive stage and post-measles stage. The post-measles stage is usually very dangerous if person has developed complications. Okay, prodromal stage lasts for 4 days from 10th to 14th day of infection, where you will develop fever, Koplik spot. What are Koplik spot? They are spots in the mucosa. This is Koplik spot in the buccal mucosa, right? Can you see this? This is a Koplik spot. Then maculopapular dusky red rash. It starts behind the ears and then spread to face, arm, trunk and legs. And when it is fading, it will fade in the same order where it had occurred. Like it developed through ears, face, arm, trunk, legs, that is how it will fade. Okay. So fever on 10th day, Koplik spot will develop on 12th day and rash you will see on 14th day. Okay. In post-measles stage, what will you see? You will see weight loss, weakness. In case there is a failure to recover and leads to the chronic illness, this might lead to bacterial complications such as otitis media, bronchopneumonia, right? If there is tuberculosis, this will also give you false positive Monteau test. In case of worsening of underlying tuberculosis with false positive Monteau test, this should be negative, okay? This I told you. There is something called as subacute sclerosing panencephalitis. This is a very serious complication of measles. This is near to death experience, okay? Fatal, very fatal. What are the specimens you will take? You will take nasopharyngeal swab and do antigen detection by using anti-nucleoprotein antibodies. You can do viral isolation through monkey or human kidney cell line, and what will they produce? They will produce multinucleated giant cells again. Okay. What is this you can see here? This is multinucleus, many nucleus, the cell has become giant. Multinucleated giant cells of measles. There is no specific treatment, but even when you are giving measles vaccine also, and after the child has developed to 1 year of age, you provide with vitamin A. Why? Because this measles has capability of causing ocular infections, and vitamin A we are giving to prevent the blindness, okay, and it will also boost the immunity. Since it can spread through respiratory route, what airborne precaution should you use? Do you know about negative pressure room? Anyone? Negative pressure room is a room where negative pressure is maintained, which means the air in this room should not go out, okay, and you should use the appropriate personal protective equipments. What are these equipments? N95 mask. Where else you're using this equipment? Tuberculosis, right? Also, a tuberculosis patient is also placed in negative pressure room, okay. Where do you see positive pressure? Very good. OTs. You see positive pressure in OTs and negative pressure in infected patient's room. What is happening in OT? You want air to be clean. So what do we have there? Did I say that air goes outside from this room? No. This, in positive pressure rooms, there is a positive pressure, right? What is there in your lungs? What kind of pressure is there? Negative pressure. So you are taking the air inside. So in negative pressure room, the outer air will enter. And in case of positive pressure rooms, the inner air, the air in this room will go out. But outer air should not be able to come inside. So what are we doing in positive pressure room? You are recirculating, or you are taking already filtered air inside this room, right? This is the mechanism. What is the vaccine available? Again, it's a live vaccine. What are the strains? एडमंस्टन ज़ाग्रेब स्टेन, शॉर्ट स्टेन और मोरेटन स्टेन. इसमें से ये इंपॉर्टेंट है, एडवर्डसन ज़ाग्रेब स्टेन. Okay, it is prepared from chick embryo cell line. It has to be reconstituted before use. Thermolabile, it is stored at -20 degree temperature. I had told you how the vaccines are kept in cold chain and how to check if the vaccine is still usable. There was a mark, heat labile mark on the vaccine bottle, right? It was what was the color of that thing? Outer circle was which color? Fungal infections categorized into 3 mycosis. What is mycosis? Mycosis. Myco is fungus. Okay. Categorized into 3: superficial, subcutaneous and opportunistic. Opportunistic will cause infection in which cases? Immunocompromised cases. By whom? By ubiquitous fungus that is found everywhere, but these people are prone to these people are prone to these funguses, right? In superficial mycosis, where it will affect? To the external surface, epidermis. In subcutaneous, it will also affect the underlying layers, right? So let's see about tinea versicolor. Can you see this round scaly patches of hypo to hyperpigmentation of the skin? Okay, this is there. This is superficial infection. What do you call this infection? This is tinea versicolor. It is caused by lipophilic fungus called Malassezia furfur. Okay, how do you diagnose this? Everybody knows by now. You use the skin scrapings, dip it into the potassium hydroxide and then observe it into microscope. Which field? High power field. Okay, this much you know. This is what? This is a spaghetti and meatball appearance. What are you seeing here? These are the hyphae, right? These are budding hyphae and budding yeast cells. So what do you call it? Spaghetti and meatball appearance. I'll just show you pictures. Another form. You know about ringworm? You have heard about ringworm? Okay. So these infections based on their habitat are classified based on their habitat. So what do you mean by anthropophilic? Anthropophilic is residing on humans. Zoophilic is residing on animals. And geophilic is commonly found in the soil. So all these are causing infections. Now, since we have we are studying dermatophytosis, it is the most common superficial mycosis which is affecting what? Skin, nails and hair. So whenever you think about trichophyton, see there is tri. So it will, trichophyton species will infect what? 3, skin, hair and nail. Epidermophyton will infect what? Skin and nail. Skin is common everywhere. And microsporum species, skin and hair. Just remember this properly. In tricho there is skin, hair and nail. In micro there is hair and skin, and in epidermo there is skin and nail. Okay. This is how they are manifested based on the places they are affecting. You can see this is Tinea capitis, this is Tinea corporis because it's on the non-hairy part of the body. This is Fasciae because it's on the face. This is pedis because it's on the foot. Okay. How do you diagnose the superficial mycosis? Dermatologists diagnose this with the help of wood lamp examination. What happens here? You can see this portion, this is infected, right? Fluorescence due to presence of pteridine pigment that is present in the cell wall of this fungus. So it will appear like this. This is positive wood lamp examination. Okay. For specimen collection, you will take the part that is affected, skin, nail or hair. And hair should be plucked but not cut. Why are you plucking it? Because the skin is also getting affected, right? And it will help you with the differentiation because not in all cases you have been taught with the basic diagnosis of the fungus. We'll grow this fungus on Sebarodes dextrose agar. After it grows, you will classify them based on their obverse and reverse view. You will classify them on the vegetations and pigments the fungus are showing, and then perform microscopy. In microscopy, you will see the presence of hyphae and macroconidia and microconidia, right? So based on that, you will be able to differentiate. See here, this hair perforation test is there. This is a hair strand. Can you see? But when the fungus is infected, you will see the wedge-shaped perforations can be seen in this case. So such hair perforation tests are positive for Trichophyton mentagrophytes and M. canis, Microsporum canis. Okay. Also urease test. Where did you see urease test? Urease is what? An enzyme. It is produced by the organism. So this urease test will be positive in case of Trichophyton mentagrophytes. Okay. That was about superficial mycosis. Coming to subcutaneous mycosis. These subcutaneous mycosis agents are usually found where? In the soil. So how will you get this infection? Through traumatic inoculation into the skin, right? And what will it lead to? It will lead to certain lesion. But when these lesions are produced, they will form into the sinuses. So what is the typical presentation of mycetoma? Swelling, discharging sinuses and presence of granules. This is chronic and slowly progressing granulomatous lesion of the skin and subcutaneous tissue. This mycetoma was discovered in India in Madurai, South India by John Gill. It also known as Madiromycosis. It is very common in Tamil Nadu and Rajasthan in India. Okay. But when this mycetoma is caused by a fungi, you call it eumycetoma. And when it is caused by actinomyces or nocardia, you call it actinomycetoma. And when it is caused by Staphylococcus aureus, you call it botryomycosis. It's a very important MCQ, this thing. Okay. If Staphylococcus aureus is causing this mycetoma, you call it botryomycosis. When we talk about mycetoma, you should remember sinuses, discharging sinuses, swelling and presence of granules in the discharge. Okay. How will you differentiate between fungal and bacterial mycetoma? Can you see this mycetoma is purulent because this is bacterial, and over here it is serous. It will have a single well-defined margins, whereas it will have multiple tumor masses with ill-defined margin. This is bacterial, okay? And fungal will cause osteosclerotic lesions, whereas bacterial mycetoma will be osteolytic. Ultimately, what will the granules contain? They will contain here fungal hyphae. Fungal hyphae will be bigger in size, more than 2 micrometer. But in case of bacterial mycetoma, there will be filamentous bacteria, which is less than 2 micrometer, smaller in size. Okay. See, can you see this? These are separate sinuses. These are all interconnected inside. The swelling is there, and when you take the specimen, you will be able to see granules. See this palisading arrangement of the hyphae. What is palisading? Parallel. And over here, there is a granulomatous reaction, but surrounding over here, this is bacteria, filamentous bacteria. Okay. This is what a granuloma caused by the mycetoma, caused due to mycosis. Culture and everything remains the same. You will treat them with amphotericin B and itraconazole. Okay. Coming to opportunistic infections. Opportunistic infections there are some certain common agents such as Candida. Candida, you know about Candida. Candida is able to cause n number of diseases: oropharyngeal candidiasis, vulvovaginitis, balanitis, posthitis, esophageal candiditis, all this in immunocompromised patients. Other than this, there is aspergillosis and cryptococcosis. Okay. Other than this, there are certain dimorphic fungus. What are dimorphic fungus? What are dimorphic fungus? Any one example of dimorphic fungus? And here it is given Penicillium myrnifi. So what? Now it is renamed as Stellaromyces myrnifi. What is dimorphic fungus? Occurs in 2 forms. At 37 it will occur in which form? Yeast form. At room temperature it will occur in mold form. Okay. Okay. That was about opportunistic infections. Last. This is a very short and sweet topic. Okay. Do you think I'll release you before 4? That's a myth. Okay. What is scabies? You might have heard about scabies, right? What is scabies? What is ectoparasite? Ectoparasites are residing on the cells, on the surface of the body. Don't talk. I'll delay your release by 10 minutes if you do that. Okay. Ectoparasites are residing on the body. So this mite, this Sarcoptes scabiei mite, where is it residing? On the epidermis. It resides where? In stratum corneum. Okay. And About after 1 to 2 months, a person will start developing symptoms such as itching. And there is such a nocturnal based itching, so much, so bad that a person cannot resist scratching. So when the patient comes to you, you will see that there are scratches on his arms and legs, and wherever this mite resides in the areas where they're under the skin folds, right? What are the skin folds? Here, below the breasts, okay, in the perineal region. So there you will see the intense abrasions of the patient's own nails, okay. And this is the only disease which do not spare rich, poor, okay, good or bad or anything. If this mite is there and you have shed the fomites or anything, and suddenly this mite has invaded your skin, you will definitely develop the disease. And depending on the immunity, of course, once there is reinfection, the symptoms can be seen within 1 to 4 days also, okay. What is the treatment? Whatever fomites of the infected person are there, you have to put them for sun drying, wash them, and you have to use permethrin ointment, okay. This is the treatment, okay. This was about scabies and ectoparasites. And scabies is very common in India.